Welcome to the SmartKeys podcast. Why is a company that doesn't own a single hotel room worth, more than Marriott and Hilton combined? Today, we're setting out to unpack a massive shift in how value is actually created and captured in the modern economy.
Yeah, that question you just asked, it's really the defining business puzzle of our time. We are rapidly moving away from an era where the most dominant businesses strictly created things.
Right.
And we're moving into one where the most valuable businesses simply connect people.
Exactly. And so for you listening, whether you're building a startup, trying to innovate inside a massive corporation, or you just want to understand the underlying mechanics of the economy for your next strategy meeting, think of this deep dive as your shortcut. We're looking at a comprehensive guide titled Platform Business Model: Unlocking Network-Driven Growth by Felix Römer, which you can find over at smartkeys.org.
It's a fantastic resource,
Yeah.
honestly.
It really is. We're going to figure out how these systems actually work, the mechanics behind their hyperscale, and, how you can apply these operational insights. But first, we have to establish a baseline,
Oh, definitely.
because platform is a word that gets thrown around in almost every corporate slide deck today. So how do we actually distinguish a true platform from just another piece of software?
Well, it is heavily misused, Calling a standard software as a service app a platform just because it has, like, a lot of drop-down menus or a complex dashboard completely misses the point.
Yeah, exactly.
The source text gives us a strict litmus test. If your success does not depend on interactions among distinct groups of users, you are not a platform. You're just running a linear play.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because that contrast between a linear business and a connection-led business is the absolute core of this whole concept.
It really is the foundation.
Right, so when looking at the examples in the guide, companies like General Motors or Netflix versus Uber or Alibaba, I picture a linear business like a pipeline.
A pipeline. Yeah, I like that analogy.
You manufacture a product at one end, say a car or a television series. You just push it down the pipeline, and a consumer buys it at the other end. You own the factory, you own the inventory, and your costs scale up linearly with your production.
What's fascinating here is how fundamentally that contrasts with the platform alternative. If a linear business is a pipeline, a true connection-led business is a town square.
Oh, a town square, meaning your only job as the business owner is to pave the square, keep the lights on, and make sure it's a safe place for people to transact.
Exactly. You don't own the goods. You just govern the interactions between the buyers and the sellers who show up.
And that completely changes the financial reality of the organization. Because in my pipeline example, a firm has to sink massive amounts of capital into inventory and physical assets.
Right. Like if Netflix wants more subscribers, they have to spend billions of dollars making or licensing more movies.
But in the town square model, the capital doesn't go into physical goods. It goes into, incentives, matchmaking algorithms, and governance.
Exactly. Uber doesn't own the cars. Airbnb doesn't own the real estate. Alibaba doesn't hold the inventory.
So the profit and loss statement is basically inverted. You are trading production costs for coordination costs.
Precisely. Though the author, Felix Römer, gives a start hybrid warning here, a lot of legacy companies actually try to do both.
Wait, they try to be a pipeline and a town square?
Yeah, they want the total control of a pipeline and the infinite scale of a town square. The text argues that mixing them can work, but a business must strictly choose which side dominates its strategy.
Or else they just fall apart.
Pretty much. If you get confused about whether you're selling your own inventory or facilitating a marketplace, your internal costs will skyrocket as you try to manage two conflicting operational models. And, your users will just lose trust.
That makes a lot of sense. It makes me think of Amazon trying to balance selling their own Amazon Basics products while simultaneously hosting third-party sellers. It requires ruthless prioritization so they don't break the town square by favoring their own pipeline too much.
Exactly.
So once a business commits to the town square model, the immediate question is scale. Because they aren't bogged down by manufacturing inventory, how do they grow so large so quickly? The text points directly to network effects as the engine here.
It does. Network effects are the hidden mechanics that turn a small, isolated community into a self-reinforcing market. The standard definition is that every additional user makes the service more valuable for all the other users.
But the guide breaks this down into two distinct categories: direct and indirect.
Yes, so direct network effects are what we see with communication tools. Same side effects.
Right. If I join a messaging app, it's immediately more useful for all my friends who are already on it.
Exactly. And then you have indirect or cross-side network effects. This happens across different sides of a market. Think of riders and drivers.
Okay.
More drivers attract more riders because wait times drop, and more riders draw more drivers because there's more money to be made.
Wait, let me push back on this a bit. The way network effects are often pitched in tech media, it sounds like an unstoppable upward spiral. But if Uber gets, like, way too many drivers, doesn't the supply outstrip demand?
Yes, that can happen.
Drivers don't get enough rides, their hourly pay plummets, they get frustrated, and they quit. Doesn't this cross-side effect cannibalize itself if it's not perfectly balanced?
That is a very real threat, and the text addresses this through the lens of negative network effects. Growth without governance causes the system to fracture.
Ah, so if the town square gets overcrowded, noisy, or unbalanced, people stop coming.
Exactly. You get congestion, spam, and fraud. The platform's job is not just to blindly acquire users, but to manage the liquidity.
Liquidity, meaning making sure a buyer actually finds a seller when they search, rather than staring at an empty page, or I guess a seller staring at a market with no buyers.
Right. And this leads to what the author calls the core transaction.
Right.
To manage liquidity, platforms have to relentlessly optimize this core transaction. The text references Ronald Coase, an economist who introduced the concept of transaction costs back in 1937.
Oh, wow. So this is an old concept.
Yeah, Coase asked why firms exist at all and concluded it was to reduce the transaction costs of organizing labor and resources. Modern platforms are the digital evolution of that idea.
Because they reduce friction. The entire reason they survive is that they reduce the cost, time, and effort of discovering a match and completing an exchange for independent agents.
Precisely.
But if reducing friction is the only way to survive, how does a startup actually afford to do that before they have any revenue? They essentially have to build a friction removal machine from scratch.
They do, and the guide outlines 4 repeatable steps to achieve this efficiently. First, identify and attract the right participants.
Okay, identify and attract.
Second, match them using relevant signals so they aren't searching forever. Third, facilitate the transaction with embedded tools like integrated payments or escrow.
And the fourth.
Fourth is capture feedback like ratings and reviews to improve the next match. If a platform fails to lower those discovery and transaction frictions, trust erodes, negative network effects take over, and the business dies.
Lowering friction really is the survival mandate. So operationally, how does a company actually manage that playbook? The guide breaks down 4 core functions a platform must execute, right?
Yes, the 4 operational pillars are audience building, matchmaking, providing core tools, and setting rules and standards.
Let's pause on that first one, audience building. This feels like the classic chicken and egg problem. If I am building a marketplace for freelance designers, why would enterprise companies sign up if there are no designers?
Right.
And why would designers spend hours creating profiles if there are no companies hiring?
This raises an important question, and it is the primary filter that kills most platform startups. The text provides definitive strategy for this called seeding.
Seeding, like planting seeds.
Exactly. You do not just build the software and hope people organically show up. You have to manually jumpstart the liquidity.
How do you do that without faking the user base?
By supplying one side of the market yourself initially, or by providing immense standalone value to one user group before a network even exists.
Oh, okay.
The guide provides a fascinating case study with John Deere. They didn't launch a massive open agricultural marketplace on day one and invite everybody to trade data. They launched a closed system called My John Deere.
Right, I read about that. It was a tool specifically for individual farmers to track their own equipment and crop yields.
Exactly. So they built a single-player tool first, a pipeline product, essentially.
Yeah.
They created a highly valuable loop of data just for the farmer. Think of a farmer using the software to map out their field yields perfectly. Once that core value was undeniable and farmers were locked into using the software daily, John Deere had the audience side of the equation solved.
And then they opened it up.
Yes. Only then did they open their APIs to jumpstart third-party partners. Suddenly, seed and fertilizer startups were begging to join the platform because the farmers were already there, holding incredibly valuable data that the startups wanted to plug into.
That is genius. The other example in the text is Salesforce, which is interesting because they started as business-to-business software, not a consumer marketplace.
Right. Salesforce used a freemium model and heavily targeted developers first. They built an ecosystem where independent developers could easily create custom applications on top of the Salesforce architecture.
I see the logic there. Because if you capture the developers, they build the highly specialized custom tools that make the CRM sticky for the enterprise customers. The developers are the seed that ultimately attracts and retains the enterprise buyers.
You've hit the nail on the head. You seed by focusing on a narrow niche where you can guarantee value, recruit anchor users, and ensure the core transaction works manually before you ever try to scale to the masses.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Once you successfully seed the platform and those cross-site network effects actually start spinning, the user base surges.
It explodes.
We transition from a carefully managed town square to a hyperscale metropolis. How does the software architecture hold up under that weight?
Well, this is where many companies fracture. From a technology standpoint, the text stresses that to achieve hyperscale, you must transition to a modular architecture and rely heavily on APIs. You cannot operate on a monolithic codebase.
Let's define that for a second. A monolithic code base is when your entire software application is just one giant interconnected block of code, right?
Yes. And the problem with a monolith is that if you want to update one single feature, you risk breaking the entire system. At hyperscale, you need what is called horizontal scaling through microservices.
Like Uber.
Exactly. Think of Uber. The engineering team updating the mapping software operates completely independently from the team managing the payment gateway. There are separate modules that talk to each other via APIs. If the Maps module experiences a glitch, the payment module still functions perfectly.
That modularity is what allows a platform to handle millions of simultaneous core transactions without crashing. And as the data volume explodes alongside that traffic, human curation becomes literally impossible.
Oh, completely.
The guide emphasizes AI-driven matching here, right?
Absolutely. When your inventory is essentially infinite, you need AI to rank results, filter out spam, and personalize the feed. The time to match has to stay incredibly low, regardless of how big the network gets. A user shouldn't have to scroll through 10,000 listings to find a relevant match.
Which brings us to the operational side of hyperscale, which is honestly my favorite concept in this whole guide. The business efficiency trend of externalizing internal costs.
Is a powerful concept.
It is such a clinical academic term for something so profound. You are getting your users to do the heavy lifting for you.
It is the ultimate lever for scale. The text points to Expedia. Expedia doesn't employ a massive call center of travel agents to custom-build itineraries for every customer. They just build the interface, and the traveler does the work of searching, comparing, and booking.
Or look at Facebook. They don't pay journalists or photographers to create content. The users generate the content for free. You shift the cost of creation and service delivery directly onto the participants.
Right. Your unit costs plummet while the variety of inventory skyrockets. But the author strongly cautions that this externalization only works if the user experience is flawless and the incentives are perfectly aligned.
You can't just hand someone a clunky, slow interface and expect them to do your data entry.
Exactly. You have to offer them reach, revenue share, status badges, or pure utility. Furthermore, to protect this hyperscale model, platforms have to proactively manage regulation and risk.
Right, because when you have millions of people generating content or providing independent services, you inevitably run into privacy laws, labor disputes, and safety issues.
The text argues that the best platforms don't view compliance as a burden. They treat it as a competitive advantage. If you build transparent data policies, clear dispute resolutions, and strong safety controls directly into your core functions, you avoid massive regulatory fines.
And more importantly, you build deep user trust. Trust is the actual currency of a platform. Without it, your participants will simply migrate to a safer town square.
Completely agree.
So we have the town square paved, we've seeded the initial liquidity so buyers can actually find sellers, we're using modular architecture and AI to handle the hyperscale, and users are actively generating the value while we maintain trust.
That's the formula.
But this brings us to the bottom line. What does this all mean for monetization? Who actually pays the bill?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, monetizing a platform is a delicate balancing act. It is not like a linear business where you just mark up the cost of manufacturing a product by 20%.
Right.
The guide explores multi-sided revenue models. Platforms often use take rates, which is taking a percentage fee on every transaction that occurs, or they use advertising and premium subscriptions. But the real masterstroke is understanding cross-side subsidies.
Meaning you actually subsidize one group of users to ensure they show up so you can charge the other group.
Exactly. You identify which side of your market is the most price-sensitive or the most scarce, and you keep their access completely free or even pay them to join. Then, you charge the side that extracts the most financial value from the network.
I see. So rather than the old cliche nightclub analogy of letting women in free to charge the men a cover, a better tech equivalent would be Adobe
Oh,
PDF.
that's a perfect example.
Adobe gave away the PDF Reader software for free to millions of regular users. That subsidized mass adoption. Because everyone had the reader, enterprise businesses were willing to pay a premium for the PDF Creator software. They subsidized the masses to charge the side, extracting the financial utility.
That is a brilliant example of a cross-side subsidy in technology. The goal is to maximize total market value, not just extract a profit from every single user interaction. The text highlights a golden rule here. Don't tax growth too early.
If you start slapping high take rates on transactions before your network effects are really locked in, you kill the liquidity. You leave the door wide open for a competitor to undercut you with a cheaper alternative.
You have to reach escape velocity first. You delay heavy monetization until user retention stabilizes and your network mode is deep. And this brings us to exactly why investors are so obsessed with this model.
Oh, the multiples.
Yes, when you combine that deep network moat with the scale economics we discussed, where externalizing costs means your marginal cost to serve one more user is near zero, the financial outcomes are staggering.
And the guide backs this up with a very specific metric. It states that successful platform businesses trade near an 8.9x revenue multiple.
Yes. Compare that to the 2 to 4x multiple that traditional linear peers in the S&P 500 receive.
Let's bridge that for a second to really understand the mechanism. Investors pay that 8.9x premium because unlike a pipeline business that has to build a brand new physical factory to double its revenue, a platform just has to spin up more server space.
Exactly. Their marginal costs are practically zero. Once a platform reaches critical mass, the winner-takes-most dynamics kick in. The barriers to entry for competitors become impossibly high. And because they aren't paying for physical inventory, those expanding revenue pools translate directly into massive profit margins.
It is a fundamentally different asset class in the eyes of the market. Well, this has been an incredible breakdown. For everyone listening, if you want to actually execute on this, the text leaves us with a strict, practical roadmap you have to follow. You don't just jump straight to monetization. The sequence is identify your unique advantage, build the modular infrastructure, seed the initial market to solve the chicken and egg problem, scale by reducing transaction friction, monetize only once retention is stable, and finally, expand.
Expansion is where you see the real titans flex their muscles. The text points to Grab, which started strictly as a ride-hailing app, but used its network and distribution to expand into payments and financial services. Or Nike, which beautifully mixes its direct-to-consumer experiences with selective partnerships to deepen loyalty while keeping ultimate control of its brand.
It is a phenomenal playbook. So before we wrap up, we always like to leave you, the listener, with something to chew on, something practical to take back to your own desk today.
I would leave you with this thought. If you are currently working within a traditional linear business model, if you're pushing products down a pipeline, what is the single hidden point of friction that, if you removed it, could transform your isolated product into a thriving, multi-sided ecosystem? Think about your unused data or your existing user base. Is there a town square just waiting to be built?
That is the million, or rather, the 8.9x multiple question. Thank you for tuning in to the SmartKeys podcast. If you found this deep dive valuable, please hit subscribe so you never miss our analysis. And I highly urge you to read Felix Römer's full article. There is so much more granular detail in there about API architecture and governance frameworks that we just couldn't cover today.
Definitely check it out.
You can find the link right down in the show notes. Until next time, keep looking for those points of friction and start building your town square.